Right. So,
Welcome everyone to the fourth episode of Creators Arena, brought to you by creators of product community. Today, we are lucky to have with us Kartik Kannan, who heads product for Cricket.com. Uh, Such an exciting product to work for. He's built a team from a single person to 20-member team, and he has built cricket's first trademarked ML product called Criclytics. Earlier, he had worked with ESPN on their gaming portfolio, managing fantasy, Predictor, building cricket's first online quizzing product, CricIQ. Personally, I've been playing fantasy on ESPN since I think 15 or 20 years. So this is personally very exciting for me. And Karthik has a very deep experience in product. He has worked in various industries like online music, online travel, online listing in various companies like Hungama, Travelocity, eBay. And he also worked with ThoughtWorks as a consultant, where again he worked with a variety of industries like robo-advisory, urban transportation marketplace, peer-to-peer lending, government softwares, and rural content archive media. So without taking much of the time, I will hand it over to Karthik. And thank you everyone for taking out time on a weekday evening to join us for this event as well. Over to you, Karthik.
right. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction, Devakar. It's also my pleasure to be speaking at a gathering. And one of the good things about speaking or making presentations every now and then, apart from work, is that you also get a reality check of how good or how bad your product is, or where is it exactly going. So I'm also looking forward to questions and feedback that will help us get better at what we're doing. Meanwhile, this is largely I'm just trying to share some of our experiences, and you could call it a moonshot of sorts because of the way we tried experimenting with certain genres, breaking certain design patterns. So that's one of today's topics is an ML first approach to building products. Is my audio clear for everyone? If no answers are there, I'm assuming it's clear.
Yeah, it's very good, at least here. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Just making this a little bigger. Yeah. Is the audio? Sorry, is the video frame coming in between the presentation?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So yeah, an ML first approach as such to building products. I'll very quickly do an introduction of the speakers. Apart from me today, we also have Supratim, who will be helping me with a few slides. Supratim is a lead data scientist at Cricket.com. I basically manage product and data science. And in a startup, there's no real fixed role, so I end up doing a lot more things than just these two. But for now, we'll just keep it as these two. And when we usually say an ML first approach, it looks a little different because no one has used this term. And what do I mean by an ML first approach? It's an approach where machine learning is at the core of the product and it defines the overall product evolving around it. Now, to give an example, the one in the blue or green, whichever color, whatever your eye sees, but basically the bluish green color. A typical company would build components, which is basically the features. They would think about the feature, they would then think about, okay, what the user experience is. And then tech is usually an afterthought, saying that, okay, let's build whatever tech is required to support this. And I'm talking largely of companies in the cricket content or the sports content industry. So this is how they potentially think. Now you could ask this question, okay, if I add a layer of ML on top of this, it still does what you're doing, right? Fair question. But I think it's rather in the approach rather than what you have as an end product. So fundamentally, it is the approach that we are differentiating ourselves on. The way we thought about this product is, let's think about what are the problems in cricket that we basically think we need to be using maths to solve. And then let's worry about the kind of tech infrastructure that's required in a way that we are able to seamlessly put this across devices, across, like if 2 million people are simultaneously doing this. How are we able to, release this out? Then comes, the user experience of, okay, we have a math. I mean, we have an idea here where, data is crunching and throwing numbers at you. How can users consume it? And then finally, okay, now that we've built this, you can't go to market with just an ML feature. So you need to have the basic components like what everybody else has. So in our case, we actually built those components at the end. So the ML came first, then we had all of the other components built around it. So even today, if you look at our app, the most prominent feature or the most prominent thing that you'll see is Criclytics, though there isn't much cricket happening at the moment. But Criclytics as a section today gets far more screen time than some of the articles written. And again, it's not an indication of article quality or anything like that, but it's just the prominence of how the user experience for a cricket fan has been reimagined. So that's basically where the ML first approach came about in our entity. But it's not just about, hey, we suddenly thought about, since ML is cool, we thought about it. It wasn't that way. There were some situations that made us think that way, and based on the constraints, we felt this was the best route possible. And so yeah, this is the rough flow. In case any of you have questions, please type it. I'll keep checking the chat log to see if some questions are coming. So this is roughly the approach that we'll be taking. And yeah, so now comes the important question: why an ML first approach? As much as I showed you, what exactly is an ML first approach? Now the question is why. Now, sometime back in 2018, when we started building the team, the mandate given at that point to the initial set of 2-3 people who were there was that let's build something cool, something that is that we can think of as much bigger than the current incumbents. And it's a fairly big problem to solve because the incumbents have been there for 15 years. And it's not an easy thing to go and beat somebody who's been in this business for 15 years. So one needs to think, saying, okay, what is your way to go, approach this problem? Now, while we were looking at other sports around the world, we realized that NBA, football had a lot of data, data crunching, data visualization, and they had problems that had already been solved 10 years back. And India was at the epicenter of this whole wave around data because the IPL had started in 2008, and suddenly we had a lot of franchise teams that were looking for data. From 2014, Star Sports started showing bits of, okay, what is this particular bowler's economy rate and strike rate in this particular phase of play. Now that is fairly, for an avid cricket watcher, it's a fairly normal stat. But for somebody who's just introduced to the game, it's a lot of numbers to be thrown at. So Star Sports is also trying to, take numbers to the common fan and see if the common fan is getting a little more involved in the game. So looking at the way data is, so important in sport, especially in the way NBA, NFL, or football, we're seeing that trend just happening in India. So we wanted to latch on early to that trend because if we, latch on early to the trend today, the payoff, will come 5 years later, where probably we're the only ones who are able to create content with, a math-centric background and also, talking about things that fans want to hear. Because today, the way the structure is you hire a bunch of journalists who have done 10 years of research through memory and through, being able to associate events. They're able to write beautiful prose. And it's usually tough to go get such journalists even if you're starting a company. And we experienced that in the first 3 months. Though we didn't tell them that this is the domain we had a alternate company name. And when we went and approached, nobody wanted to join us. And I'm talking about the journalists. So we realized that if we were dependent on journalists or cricketers as brands, to join a show or to build your brand, maybe it isn't the approach that will get us eyeballs. And as a result, we said, okay, there's so much of data that's happening in other sports. Let's maybe put our focus there. So the opportunity that you get with an ML first approach is, of course, the scale at which things can go. exponential, literally, and I'll tell you that number a little further down the presentation. Your differentiation. Now, even though some of the incumbents in the space may write a few stats-based articles or may have a few stat-based social posts, you are essentially a cricket content site that is also talking about stats. We are a completely stat-driven cricket experience that also creates some content. So that's how we see ourselves. And I think that differentiation also helped us enter the market and position ourselves accordingly. So answering the next question that logically comes, okay, now is this ML first approach right for your industry? Well, I'll answer that question not by going into each of your industries, but by telling what worked for us in our industry. And maybe you could apply a couple of those questions for the industries that you're part of. Before that, I think you must understand roughly what is the cricket content, industry structure as such. That will help you appreciate the context in terms of why this approach that we have in terms of an ML first approach is needed. So usually there are a lot of people employed to create content. For example, the score that you see, 123 for 1 in 17 overs, there is a scoring team which is looking at a television and trying to code, okay, where was the ball, who was the bowler, where did the ball pitch, and where did the ball go. So that team just codes the score, comes off a server, and then you're seeing it. Similarly, there's another team that's also doing commentary, where they're typing live ball by ball commentary, seeing it from television. Then as a match is on, there is, before a match, there is somebody who's writing a pre-match piece. And usually when we started doing research, we found that a lot of pre-match pieces were not very data centric. They were just on the opinion of the writer. And we found that a little underwhelming for a fan who used to, put so much of faith in some of the articles that were written. And I never thought I would say this of the incumbents because I held the incumbents in very high esteem. But I found that, okay, there were a couple of chinks that we could, potentially go target. And then there is a post-match content. Then there are, memories or nostalgia-driven content, which is what is doing the rounds right now, because there's no cricket, that's being played or is, on the anvil for the next month or so. And then, of course, you have clickbaity content. Did you know what happened when Atiya Shetty met KL Rahul? That kind of clickbaity content which gets views. So there are two ways in this industry to succeed. You either create clickbaity content or you create very high quality content. And as a result, digital advertising on top of premium users. So those are the two models that work. And the only innovation in recent years has actually been language support, saying, okay, if people from Bengal and Tamil Nadu are reading, can I have language conversion into the regional language, which is Tamil or Bengali or Malayalam, and then give my content to them, because it opens up a completely different set of people who want to feel their superstars or understand more about their cricket superstars. Now in this structure, obviously as a newbie or a new entrant, you can't target everything. There's only certain things that you can target, and we decided we'll take on a couple of pillars that are shown here. So the ones in green are the ones we actually took on. So our fundamental question is, okay, 123 for 1 in 17 overs. Who's winning? We still don't know that. And as we were doing our math, again, as I said, it's not like one moment of epiphany where we realized that data is the way to go. But over a series of interactions that we had with industry people and with our own getting to the drawing board on what the business plan should be, we realized that for a lot of time, so from 1993 till about 2005, it was just about what was the score, because not everybody had access to satellite television. Then from 2005 to 2017 or 18, it was rather 2015, it was around who gives me the fastest score. While there are multiple people giving these text commentary based scores, it's about who's fastest, and there's an ad itself on that. Then once Hotstar started coming in 2014-15, it was about trying to watch the game live wherever you go. So the dependence on text commentary or text related content for cricket came down. So given that this is the industry structure, we decided, can we be the best second screen experience that is required from a data centric standpoint? Because everything else describing the coverage or describing the match is already being done by Hotstar or Sony Live. And people really don't listen into all the intricacies being spoken. They're happy if you're able to tell them something important is happening, or you're able to convey certain key stats during key moments of the game. So how can we complement the television if somebody is in front of a television? Or how can we basically go and if let's say there's a Zimbabwe Sri Lanka game that's going on, it's not on television in India, how can we tell a fan what exactly is going on, and what are the narratives that could potentially come there? So those were our fundamental use cases. So we said the world will move towards the world will move from what is the score to what will be the score, and we'll probably pioneer that. So that was the approach that we decided to take, and our focus was basically the pre-match market and the live match market. So yeah, so coming back to the ML first approach, how was it right for us? See, there are different forms of data in each industry. I think it's in the sports industry is largely spread around event-related data. And when I say events, sport itself is an event, and there's a lot of data that's logged on how the event is being played, how the event was played. So do we have access to that? So we realized that if we spoke to about 5-6 vendors, and it took 5-6 different vendors to collate the data, clean it, and then make it a single source for us. So we had complete access to external event related data at different levels of detail. Now, having had access to that, we realized that this is very powerful, and it creates a huge opportunity for us to put math on it and then derive a bunch of things from it. Oh, where are the other opportunities apart from this? It could potentially come around user patterns and how is the user behaving? Simple things around, okay, like Amazon has its collaborative filtering technique applied to things like, okay, these are the list of items that people saw after they came to a particular item. Now you could have those patterns and automate a bunch of automate how your whole page is structured around which content should come basis traffic and what people are watching, instead of actually have dependence on a content team to move around items. But that's something we thought is a problem we'll tackle later on. The third kind of data that you otherwise would want is general data on, for example, if let's say you're a taxi provider and you want data on where do most traffic jams happen, or where do which are areas where high demand happens. Google Maps helps you, partly get an idea of where people would be, but it's not a complete accurate answer. Similarly, for somebody taking a loan in terms of a financial service, a CIBIL score is maybe what is something they have that will offset guess making, because you get access to what kind of previous loans have they taken, what is their credit paying capacity. But again, the data is not complete, but the data is publicly available, which you need to find ways to get or find ways to approximate. Now, given that these are the three data types potentially there, you have to ask yourself in your industry, what is your level of access to each of these kinds of data? Here, the external sport event related data that we had access to, like a match scorecard and a lot more intricate data in terms of, okay, where did the ball pitch? What kind of shot was offered? Was it an attacking shot? Did it go to third man? What kind of a ball was bowled? Was it a googly? So with so much of data that is there, is logged in one single ball, we realize that if you're able to apply math to it, which is in this case largely supervised learning basis classification and regression, and unsupervised learning, I have put unsupervised learning in green because that's not yet made it to our app. Those are efforts that are ongoing in terms of clustering certain similar types of behaviors. But yeah, this is roughly in terms of why it was right for us to go ahead with an ML first approach, given where we were. So these are some of the screens to help you get a understanding. My colleague Supratim will take you through what's exactly there in each of these. So to go back to the earlier conversation, we realized that if we were to just show the right numbers and represent it correctly, that obviates the need for us to create content pieces. So this is basically our home screen. So while somebody would have 10 different articles on a home screen, we have, okay, who's going to win? What are the teams that are playing? And we have a bunch of numbers and stats. By the way, these are representative screens. These are not actual screens. These were the screens that went into the PRD before we actually got it live. So you'll see odd things like India, Australia playing and then CSK playing below. So that's why I thought before somebody points that out, I tell them that these are representative screens. So essentially, and all of this data keeps changing ball by ball. So there are 240 balls in a T20 game, and for 240 times in that 3-hour period, you're going to get that many viewpoints. At some point, you're going to get, okay, Australia is going to win because 2 sixes were hit of the last 2 balls. And combining history and combining the strength of the teams involved, this is what we think will happen. And that creates opportunity for banter between fans. Similarly, these are screens about, we feel that, a lot of cricket is centered around matchups, especially after the advent of the IPL. So before each game, we want fans to celebrate players and celebrate performances. So we create some of the key matchups that they should look at so that they can follow that in the game. And what are the kind of runs today Virat Kohli will score? Again, that sets up another debate in terms of conversation. And all of this is based on, as I said, previous history, strength of the opposition, strength of what potential lineup is there today, and where is Virat exactly going to bat in that batting order. So combining multiple factors, we are throwing a lot of interesting data at fans, and we learned over time that this language agnostic thing, which is basically numbers, because even somebody who's a cricket fan sitting, let's say in the far corners of Sikkim or the far corners of Rameshwaram and Tamil Nadu, irrespective of language, they're able to connect with numbers. And that's a very important learning we had over time, that as long as we're getting the narrative right, maybe this moonshot could be a success as we try to look forward and see, okay, where is the product market fit exactly? How is it coming by? So the team that worked on it roughly was 2 data scientists, 2 product managers, 10 devs and a CTO. And yeah, the 10 devs did expand at one point of time till about 15. But this was the team that worked on it. And the difference here is that if we were a typical content-driven organization, we would have hired 15 journalists. And you wouldn't have got the same impact with 15 journalists. So that's something we learned. And yeah, we have similar screens for a live match, where I think as a match is going on, we tell you this game is, seeming similar to which other game that's happened in the past. And these are scenarios where we say, okay, right now Dhoni is batting. He's likely to score 71 to 92 if he's on 18 right now. So these are just extrapolations of whatever is going on. And yes, so these were a couple of other products, sub-products that we created on what if simulations. We had an interesting product called Death Over Simulator, where you could decide the order of which bowler should bowl, and then we'll tell you how many runs are they likely to leak and are they likely to get a wicket. And the order really matters. So it gave fans a conversation, and we in fact had an ad. We made 3 ads. We had one of our ads based on this particular feature. And then this was another feature on predicting who will be the final 4 for the IPL as well as for the World Cup, basis their current performance levels and strength levels. So that is just an introduction to what we've done so far and why we've taken that ML first approach. I'll allow my colleague Supratim to very briefly take you through some of these things that we've built without getting into the technical complexities of it. Supratim, over to you.
Thank you, Karthik. I see a few questions on the chat. Do you want to take those first, or shall we take your thing?
Let me just get to the chat.
Generally, we finish the session first and then we take the questions one by one on it.
All right.
All right. Okay. Then yeah. So go ahead. We'll probably take these questions together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Karthik. So yeah, as Karthik already mentioned, the core of the product, we call it Criclytics, and it's an amalgamation of cricket and analytics. So it is a predictive analytics system built specifically for cricket, and we use statistical and machine learning models. And the data source, the data on which we do all the analysis and everything, is purely cricket data. Now, most of the cricket data is available in public domain in different websites or different sources, but because we use it for a product, so we purchase it from legal vendors. Now, the key components that if we break down our Criclytics functionality and think of it as a pyramid, then these are the three levels of pyramid for bottom. There is a rating system, which is at the foundation layer, and then we have built everything on top of the rating system. The rating system is, of course, completely inbuilt in-house, and the predictions that we are doing at this moment of time is mostly focused on before a match, pre-match, and as the match is in progress for the live match. We can move to the next slide. Yeah. So these are the main, at a high level, these are the 4 + 4, 8 things that we are doing the prediction for. Before a match, we are predicting what is the win probability for each team, the two teams that are playing, and what is the total run that the teams are going to score, what would be the individual performances for the batsmen, and what would be the potential performance of the bowlers, how many wickets each of the bowlers is going to take. Now, of course, the predictions would be a single value, but I mean, it depends. We're trying out with different sorts to show it in the range, or to show a fixed value, or to show different ranges and assign probabilities for each ranges. So there's a things that we keep experimenting with each iteration. And as the match is in progress, we have more information than we have before the match, because before the match, so before the match we have the squad data available. But after the toss, we know the playing 11, so we get a more accurate representation of the strength of the team because the 11 + 11 players. So in addition to that, as the match is in progress, we know what is happening, the situation of the match. Based on that, we revise the winning probability of the teams, the total runs, wickets, and overs for each of the team, and the projected score for the batsmen who are at crease at that moment of time. That is something we try to predict, and the wicket, how many wickets the bowler who is bowling in that over is going to take.
Also, just to add one more thing here. As Supratim had mentioned about this particular screen, what we also do right before the toss is something called fantasy research, where we basically give out teams in case any of you plays fantasy. We auto-generate teams based on your level of risk, and then from a gamification standpoint, you're completely free to use these teams on other websites and play fantasy with your friends. So that's another thing that we realized midway, that there's a huge application of all of this in the world of fantasy sport too. So yeah, that's something that you see at the top of our right above the scorecard.
Right. Yeah. We can go. Yeah. So how do we do the prediction? Of course, we have huge amount of data available that we use. So we go through the data, go through the different formats, like mostly the three popular formats right this moment is Test, T20, and ODI. So we try to analyze, we see whether there's a correlation exists between the formats, whether we can mix and match data from different tournaments together, or do we need to only focus on international or domestic? Is the data tournament specific, or can we mix all the IPL data and the Caribbean Super League data and come up with some patterns? So we spend a lot of time, in fact, most of our time on exploring the data, going through the data, trying to figure out hidden patterns out of it, and then try to extract some features. And most of the data science project does that way, like the 80% of the time is spent, or even more is spent on exploration of the data and cleaning of the data. So that's where we spend most of our time. And then we, as we know the problem statement, the objectives, So we break down the problem into multiple steps and try to answer each of those steps and see what are the features which can answer that problem. And based on the features that we have generated through our sort of exploration, we go ahead step by step and try to solve each of those problems. Now, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we have the rating system that we developed in-house, and again, we are improving it with each iteration. So the rating system is it calculates the strength of each individual players. We calculate the strength of players, we calculate the strength of teams as well, and we try to normalize it across teams, across generations, so that no bias creeps into any of those calculations. So using those using the rating system, the rating values. Can I go back to the previous slide? Yeah, no. So using the rating as an input and certain other features as input, we divide, as Karthik mentioned, that we have the classification problem and we have regression problem. So we predict the probabilities of the teams and we predict the runs, wicket overs of team and players. And we also use Monte Carlo simulation to project performance of batsman and bowler as the match is in progress. And again, we play around with each of those features through each iteration. So in the next slide, we discuss some interesting observations that we as when match happens. I mean, this year there were a lot of matches before the lockdowns. This problem started. So through each match, we try to analyze and see what nice patterns or some nice observations that we come across. So one was in the England versus South Africa first T20, which happened in East London, and the situation was something like that. In the second innings, England was at 171.6 the start of 19th over. So they needed 7 runs in 6 overs. And they had 4 wickets in hand. And
I'm sorry, he basically meant at the start of the 20th over, England basically needed 7 of the last 6 balls. The 7 of the last over to win, yeah.
Correct, yeah, sorry for the typo. So Moeen Ali and Tom Curran were pretty strong players. They were in the crease, and Engidi was coming from the other end. And usually the perception of anyone would think that England it's a very easy ride for England. But our prediction algo at that moment of time, at the start of 19.1 over, if you look at the bottom part, it was predicting giving for 37% probability win probability to South Africa, even though the blue is South Africa and the red is England over here. So they were giving 37% chance of winning to South Africa. And as the over progressed, there was a wicket, and immediately as the wicket fell, the win probability of South Africa went up to 57%. So
again, the moot point here is at this point, what's happened is it's 5 runs still required of 4 balls, and England, as you know, bats very deep. And I was still surprised that why are we still giving such a high percentage number to South Africa? We thought that we were saying England's going to win this easily, because we always have this general fight between what are we thinking and what's Criclytics saying. But yeah, Criclytics said 57% chance of South Africa. The next ball was a dot ball; it went to 63%, and then we were like, damn, can England actually manage to lose this game? And the next ball they scored a couple of runs. We thought, okay, fine. Now with just 3 runs required, they're likely to maybe just 1 hit away. But it just turned out that England happened to lose that game and South Africa won that. So I think this was an example just to show how patterns and past history are able to combine and show you a very beautiful narrative that cannot probably come through perception of humans. And that's why we find it sometimes exciting to go work on something like this, because it gives fans, it gives us also an opportunity to see the game in a completely new light. And because this is an example that we are don't relate to, because it's England and South Africa, we thought why not we pick a game where where India is playing. And sorry, some of the names are typed wrong. So again, in this game, New Zealand required 9 runs to win in the last over, and they were 171 for 4. 2 very well set batsmen. I think Kane Williamson made about 90 odd in this game in half the number of balls, and Ross Taylor, fairly good batsman. and Shami came to bowl the last over. And Shami is typically not a T20 bowler, in the sense that Shami's strike rate in T20s is about 28, 29, as in he takes a wicket once every 29 balls. So definitely you don't expect him to defend. So that was how normal fans would perceive it. But as it happened, and as that game went closer, one data point that came as it came closer was the possibility of a tie. Let alone, I thought New Zealand winning is like the only possibility here. So we saw that the possibilities of India actually winning were increasing as the final over progressed, and the percentages of tie was also showing up to be fairly higher than some of the other games. And we were surprised when the game ended in a tie, because the game prior to this was also a tie. So we thought, this can't happen that even this game also ends in a tie, but it did. But I think that's where we were able to, see, how things like, assigning a team strength, assigning a team rating, is able to actually go look at patterns, look at their strength levels, and then make an accurate assessment. I'm not saying that this is 90% right, but it made a fair assessment. 3 balls still, before the game ended, saying that this game, India is likely to win, and this might end in a tie. So this is just an example of what Criclytics can potentially do in terms of giving a narrative to the fans. So yeah, I think that's more from, so that's about Criclytics. Thanks, Supratim, for explaining what we essentially do. And how are we doing on time, Divakar?
I think we are going okay. How many more minutes before you jump on to question and answers?
3 to 4 minutes. I just wanted to explain the user journey behind one of the features that we did. What are the failures we faced and how we corrected it? Sure.
Because I already see a lot of questions being put in the pipeline. So let's do this, and then we can jump to the questions.
Right. Last slide. Yeah. So essentially, when we are thinking of our requirements, in that whole user journey, we're thinking, okay, now this was for a feature called Death Over Simulator. Death overs is between over 16th and 20th, where we wanted to simulate what would happen if a particular bowler bowls and you have an order. Is it Shami, Bumrah, Ishant, or is it Ishant, Bumrah, Shami, depending on the number of overs that they have. Now, when we first decided on the feature, did the math for it, and then when we made the user journey to worry about, okay, how will the design be? This is how we potentially break it down into, okay, what is the action? Now, Criclytics, okay, somebody could either see the ad or come from the home screen. Now, their primary thought is, okay, who's winning this game? And the emotion is, okay, will my team win this game? And then what's the business opportunity for us at that instant? It is, can we make a user discover a very rare combination to bowl the final 5 overs, such that they're able to share this or feel empowered as a user, saying, I knew a little bit more about the game as the game was going on. Then the flow is actually from left to right. From top to bottom is, what is the user action and what is going on in their minds, such that we're able to position or, design better for the end user. So this is, a rough template of format that we would use while we obviously have certain personas that are mapped out. And for different types of personas, we have different types of journeys. So this was just to show an example of, how these things are, written. Now, one interesting thing was in the section called simulates. That is when we probably realized that users were actually having a tough time because once a ball is bowled, the difference between the time a ball is actually bowled on the ground and when it updates on an app is about 20-25 seconds. Because even the television picks it 8 seconds later. So as a result, what's happening? Your querying for 16.1 and 16.2 has already started here. So users were kind of lost between, okay, what should I do? Should I query something right now, or should I just watch the match? And while they're querying, their question is, okay, which bowler actually bowled it in the previous match? I don't know what is the order in which I query. So an advanced fan can basically go very quickly, put the query, put the order of, this is the order, this is likely to happen, and how many runs are going to come. So when we realize that there are certain sets of users who are actually doing more such simulations, per session that that we observed, and we realized there were a bunch of users who were just stuck, who weren't able to go on. We realized we had taught the math very well. We had also taught the screens very well, but there was one part of the screen which we didn't think very well, and that is what we actually now have addressed. And the other point was, this is called death over simulator. It can only be used in the last 4 overs. So even when we make an ad and the ad plays and people are searching for death over simulator, they will not find it because it gets triggered only in the 16th over. So, and similarly for an ODI match, only at for 1/10 of the resource of a match is it actually triggered. So then we realized that, okay, there were certain things in enthusiasm we didn't think through. And that's something we've made it better. We've called it over simulator now. People can simulate it at any given point of time for the next 3 overs or the next 5 overs. And we are also trying to show what are the simulations other people are running on the app and what is the most popular simulation. So it allows users to understand what this is, see others, the social proof that other people are also simulating, and these are the kind of results they're getting. So this is a feature where we faced failure and we learned from it in terms of combining the ML part, combining the user experience part, and combining how we take it to market. So I just wanted to bring a small mention of this. So with this, we end the presentation. Looking forward to your questions.
Thanks a lot, Karthik and Supratim. This has been very, very useful. Why don't you just share the chat thing on the screen so that everybody can see the questions as well, and then we can take them one by one. Whoever has written the question, please feel free to ask the question as well. So, do you want to share screen on this?
I'm sorry, I thought my screen was shared. Okay.
Yeah, and just click the chat.
Change. For some reason it isn't coming. Wait, I'll just share my screen.
Yeah.
Or can you share the screen and then see the questions?
Sure, I can. Just a second.
No worries. Meanwhile, I'll just, the ones I can read, I'll just read out.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the impact of COVID on DAUs and MAUs? Man, it's a sad story. Don't ask that. We've probably lost.
Screen now?
We are seeing something called an idea list. I don't think those are the questions. So I think people are able to see the questions. So I think even I face the same problem. I wasn't able to get the screen, the question screen there.
Okay. Okay. Why don't you start and then I'll try to take it on. So who is this?
This is Shruti Sharma, who sent a question.
You want to ask your question?
Yeah, hi. I actually just got disconnected. I have 3 questions, but I think I remember the first one. Okay, no, I think I forgot the first one.
So the first one was, what was the impact of COVID on
DAUs? Yes, what's the impact of COVID on your current DAUs and MAUs? Just indicative numbers, not particularly like numbers.
So essentially, we've lost close to about 75 to 80% of overall traffic. And that's come because we were at a very high growth stage where we were, the India-South Africa series was to happen.
Yeah.
Couple of series before that, we had actually sponsored on-ground, we were there as one of the on-ground partners. So fair amount of visibility and growth. In fact, I think in January, we were like the top 3 downloaded sports apps globally on the Play Store. So from all that high, we've fallen down because there is considerably less interest for anything that is not live. So, and people are also generally worried about COVID and they want news pertaining to that. So that's something. And I think as an app also, we were geared more so for match and not for nostalgia. So that's when we found out, okay, those are areas where we didn't think about when we started. And yes, traffic's down. So we're just right now trying to run the show with a lot of nostalgia stories going up on the site. And
so you're
we've also
pivoting in that direction. Are you pivoting in a nostalgia mode?
I think it's not temporary.
Since you have a lot of algorithms already made, how about just a suggestion, get people to feed in match dates and numbers and teams, and then maybe have them have the prediction through your algo and validate it against like a gamification thing.
There are a few things we've thought through, but the problem comes in implementing it in the time that we have, because while we were gearing to launch a few things for IPL, we weren't able to complete it. So whatever is the existing, roadmap debt that we have, we're just trying to get that out, release it on our staging server and check if everything's looking fine. So I think that effort is on. And as I said, because last year when we released, it was just an MVP 3-screen app that went live for the World Cup. We're trying to add a lot of basic features that some of the incumbents have. So right now, given that is whenever cricket starts, we're trying to get those basic features up and running. So we're not able to actually add any new feature from a data science standpoint.
Okay. Another follow-up to that was, what are the monetization strategies that you're currently using? It's a third question, but since it's relevant right now, why don't you just answer it? What monetization strategies are you currently looking at for revenue generation, since the whole thing is pretty much down?
Right. So we are part of a company called Head Digital Works, and Head Digital Works has 3 more companies. So we are the 4th company in that unit. And the parent company is into online rummy, and it's a fairly profitable space. So given that it's online rummy, they're able to, their revenues are able to sustain us. But because otherwise it's for a business of this cost, it's very tough to have this cost and not have any revenue coming in. I'm saying some other business of our size, and then we'd have to cut people and cut staff. So right now the way we have planned around monetization is working with fantasy partners. There is I don't know how many of you play fantasy cricket. So whenever you go make a team and you play fantasy, monies are divided. Like, because we generated a team, we're increasing the number of people who are able to go play fantasy and either play for free or put money. So taking a percentage cut of a user's 6-month spends is a model that we had thought through, and we are working internally with another company which is part of our own group, which is into fantasy cricket. But I think the larger monetization will hopefully come when we understand how whether laws in India permit betting, though we will not get into betting as such. I think we are largely only into cricket and cricket prediction. But if people want to look at the data and then go around that, maybe there are some conversations we can or some narratives we can build which are non-money centric but still help people around that. But I think advertising would be the lowest hanging fruit that you can do once you have significant regular traffic coming.
Yeah.
But I think it's largely still a black box. Fantasy is the nearest low hanging fruit where you can do some kind of integration. And the reason being, if you see the economies in the way cricket runs, CricInfo, from what I saw last time, they had 120 crore. It's 2018 data, 120 crores of revenue. CricBuzz had about 80 crores of revenue, and all of this is digital advertising. And I think the rest of the 10 odd sports providers put together would do 20, 25, 30 crores of business. So the whole digital advertising for sports market is 250 crores totally. And Dream 11 comes just by playing fantasy. From what I hear in within industry numbers, we heard that they were marching close to about 1,500 crores of commission, the revenue rake that they would otherwise make just by playing fantasy. So even if you are servicing a fraction of this fantasy industry, you'd still make almost half of what a CricInfo would make. And that's good enough to sustain the team that is there, which is anyway a very less team when you compare it to incumbents like CricInfo or CricBuzz. So that is the model that we've started, integrating with. But again, it's hit a roadblock because of no cricket being played. But that was the most visible model that we had.
Thank you.
Bharat, you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Hey, Karthik, great product. Really, really fascinating.
Thank you.
One quick thing is, how and when did you register your domain, dude? Because I mean, it's such a hot word. How did you get the domain?
So apparently, what I heard is that the investors had the domain for the last 2-3 years, and when our parent company acquired the fantasy, they bought stakes into a fantasy startup. That's when they realized that maybe because they have something in fantasy, they could maybe have a cricket content platform. And if you notice, that was also the trend 2 years back, where Dream 11, after they started Dream 11, they realized that a lot of people, for them to play fantasy, you need to write content on fantasy, and it can't be the same entity. So they started an entity called Sports Guru, which is now called Fan Code, which writes on matches and helps people pick their teams. So that was their very clear thing about wanting to create fantasy specific content. But we thought, okay, given that there is so much of opportunity in data, fantasy is just a very, very small application of cricket data. But if you look at the way NBA or football is there are a lot of data. The narrative around data is very huge. And for them, their revenues can also come if you're a B2B player. And if we are speaking, let's say, to broadcasters, it's a huge opportunity area. We could work with IPL teams with these models.
Sure.
Definitely wouldn't help us on the revenue bit, because it's the only person who makes money in the IPL is BCCI. The rest of the others don't make as much.
True.
And you're there because there is a certain value that you have as a business in reaching out to people. But I think what we would be exposed to is real-time strategies, and how it actually influences something happening on the field, than being somebody who's just writing an algorithm in one corner of Bangalore and then telling the world that this is how it is. So we'd probably also get closer to reality if we were to partner with B2B companies. So that's an opportunity too.
Makes sense. One other follow-up question. I think you actually partly answered that around the predictions being used for online betting, right? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, how is it generally? I mean, was it a trend in the West, for example, or in the UK for soccer and such kind of analytics being used for betting? Any insights there?
Yeah, so honestly, we've not made this product with a betting thing in mind. We realize that since there are so many predictions, people into betting may be interested, but maybe we'll have to customize the product to make it betting friendly. Like in betting, they talk about odds of various events. And here, what we do is we're basically talking how many runs. We're talking a fan's language. A typical person who's betting, his language is very different. So we are trying to do some research to understand how do we need to maybe make some changes to the product. But as I said, we will not. We were meant to be a pure cricket brand that's talking on cricket narratives, earning revenue from digital advertising, and partly from the fantasy angle. But I think once we research and understand the market, we'll probably understand how can we be an affiliate. I think the max we can probably do, even if we were to make some revenue, is probably partner with a betting company in case they want some data on certain types of odds. You can give them the odds, or make some odds and power their odds. Sure. Again, that would be a B2B play. I don't think we as a cricket content platform would have anything to do with betting.
Sure. And one last thing, I mean, since are you already doing any work on predictions or analytics for IPL auctions?
No, not as yet. That's something we'd like to solve for, but given the resource and bandwidth we have, we're just picking the ones that we really want to solve for. I think the most basic user experience, we're trying to solve for that with the resources that we have. But I think that's something we're definitely wanting to look for, hopefully by the next IPL auction.
Got it.
Which will be probably a bigger auction.
Cheers. Thanks, man. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mukund, you have a lot of questions. Can you pick up your favorite question from this and ask Karthik? Mukund, can you hear me?
Let me try and find his question.
Yeah, so his question is, what is ML first approach for your PMF? What is your revenue model? Like lots of questions. How analytics help to increase your revenue? What is your analytics in architecture?
His microphone is not working. He's just pinged.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, Okay, now so when I say revenue model, we haven't started making a lot of money. This is very minimal money that's been made in terms of us observing indirect revenue by giving users to a fantasy startup, which is again part of our own entity, and testing briefly if we could do an advertising model to help people to our Rummy platform, but we haven't done that because we had to do a double click, or there are some ways around it, because in India you can't directly transfer people to online real money gaming apps, otherwise the Play Store bans you. So we have to be very careful of any of those connotations around either real money gaming or betting. So our app again will not have all of those. So we've so far not got any revenue around that. The hope is that once our models mature, then and you're able to see a lot of these predictions come true, and people are also able to feel that, then maybe it's a good time to go to a broadcaster, good time to go to a betway of sorts and say, hey, maybe there are a lot of micro events. Maybe we could help you with data around that, and you could create a bet on that. So that way, I'm not partnering with the user. I'm directly partnering with the betting site to give some of my algos to them in case they want to run it. So, but again, that comes only with you being a more seasoned player, and the opportunity is also far higher rather than smaller plugs like digital advertising on the platform. So to answer your question, we have not seen revenue move any bit by whatever analytics we've so far got. And is your analytics engine architecture, or what is your analytics engine architecture? How is it integrated into products? Supratim, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, we do all the calculation backend. We use Amazon Web Service, but as of now, we're not using any ML service of Amazon, which is SageMaker. We're not using that. Everything, all the calculation and everything happens in the backend. Everything is written in Python, and the calls, we have exposed everything as an API, as different APIs, and then we have different layers. And at the end, I saw there was another question related to whether the models are deployed on the handset. So we can answer that also. So models are not deployed on handset. Everything is at the backend. And because the calculations are not device dependent, all the users are seeing the same prediction. So the calculation happens only once, and we store it in the DB, and the API calls and gets the data, and then it shows up on the app or the InWave or the desktop, whatever the user is using. Does that answer your question?
Thanks for answering that. Varun Parekh, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Hey, Kartik. Thanks for the great talk. Okay, so my question is, which I think has been partly answered already. Do you have any on-device ML models? And if yes, how do you manage the size of the models? Because from what I see, they're decently large to have right predictions. And if not, how do you kind of optimize your API responses so that querying for some response of like some ML query doesn't take too long actually?
Right. So, yeah, Supratim is best placed to answer that question. Supratim.
Sure. So the first part, as I mentioned, like we are not using any device-specific models, or not storing any node in the device. The pre-match is totally in our control. We try to do the prediction before 48 hours before the match, and then we retrain the models. And so every 24 hours, if we are running the processes, then the prediction usually doesn't change. But let's say in between some matches happen, so the model might learn something new. The challenge is in the live match. So every ball, when an API is being called, and usually there is a gap of some 15 seconds or some 30 seconds, or maybe a max a minute between those two calls. So the entire the latency has to be very, very less. The API should from the device, the API should basically on the back end, the API should be called. The calculation should happen and then the results should be stored, and then another API should fetch the data and send it to the UI. Now, all this the entire calculation and the storing into the database, we did through multiple iterations. We have optimized in a very to a great extent, and right now it takes around 0.1 second for everything. So it's very fast right now. We've done some simulations, as I mentioned earlier, some multiple simulations. Those take a little bit of time because those does a lot of looping, and those we are trying to optimize. And we have achieved to some extent, but we are on the work. We're still trying to improve it further.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking, tennis ball cricket is a big thing in India. Do you have any plans for that?
Yeah, Rohit he pinged me that his audio is not working. So
Right.
yeah. Do you have any plans for tennis ball cricket?
Oh, actually, honestly, we've not thought beyond whatever ML models we're doing. So we're taking life in 6 month installments. So we haven't thought that far yet in terms of how we could, have a real world connotation to cricket yet. Like, organizing tournaments or, going to the market around local tournaments. No, we've not thought about that at all. So it's largely only around the tech required to build stuff on mobile. So Uday is asking, you have mentioned CricBuzz and CricInfo's revenue.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Karthik. So I wanted to understand, you mentioned their revenue. So how is their monetization strategy different from yours?
See, theirs is primarily, it's the same over the last 15, 20 years, which is create pages, sell slots, and then sell advertising. And since they have a lot of user trust, a lot of people in India are, having both CricBuzz and CricInfo. So CricInfo is more like, I think with 15 million users on their Play Store app, they make about 120 crores. That's largely because of they sell themselves as a premium player when it goes to advertising. CricBuzz has a far larger audience. They're like almost 125 million in terms of app user base on the Play Store. And they make lesser because they don't position themselves like CricInfo. Theirs is largely advertising around if any brand has to launch, the first thing they do for mass, for reaching a large set of people is our sites like CricInfo and CricBuzz. Also, the advent of the fantasy sports industry in India since Dream 11 got funded has largely been through the vehicles of CricInfo and CricBuzz. Because if my team 11 advertises, then the other guy also advertises. So what it means is for fantasy sports providers, there is no real share of voice there because three fantasy providers could be advertising at the same time. The only person making money there is the platform, like a CricInfo or a CricBuzz. So their revenues have increased with the fantasy industry doing well. But now with funding crunch and companies also breaking down, companies also closing down in the fantasy space, one would expect, and also with COVID, what's happened is there's been lack of cricket, so it directly hits them with an advertising model. So yeah, the space is now regurgitating, and it'll be interesting to see where our play is. Though we're very small compared to these incumbents, and have a lot of respect for them. But the space is definitely regurgitating. We will have our opportunity. Is probably what we feel.
All right. Thanks, Karthik. I had one more question. So you mentioned that there are 10 developers, 2 data scientists, and CTO. So what was the role of UX in the app? So when did UX actually introduced?
Okay. So when we started, see, there were, I'll have to go a little deeper into some of our approaches. So we decided on a two-pronged approach. First one was, okay, there are a bunch of assumptions that we think as fans. Let's make those assumptions and create an MWeb page. We in fact called it mvp.crictech.com at that point of time in 2018. We built that. We took printouts of each of the screens that we did. We in fact didn't hire for design at that point of time because we were in the process, and it took us about 2-3 months to make our first design hire. Design and tech took us a lot of time. So while we started off as a team of 2 product people, 1 data analyst, while we started there, we worked with an agency that also had some developers, that also had some designers. So with them, we created a very quick MVP, showed it to all our friends, got an understanding of what is completely off. If we felt that we are innovating, We also got feedback that this is shit. And somebody told us this looks like a Windows wallpaper when we had a blue and green combination. I remember I wanted to, when you have a brief scorecard, I wanted to have this thing of, behind the brief scorecard, I wanted the actual ground's name to, photo of the ground. But in any match that you see, blue skies and green, the ground is always the same. There's no major difference. We realized, and we then got feedback that it looks like a Windows wallpaper. So we got a lot of initial user feedback, which we kept. And then what we also did is, we did a lot of qualitative user study, asking people, okay, what are their current modes of, how do they look at cricket, and what do they want? With that, we got another, this was a user study that was conducted parallel to whatever we had released. Now in that, we got a lot of user feedback that they want to celebrate players and they want to see possibilities around what players could do. So we used all that in defining, okay, what are the kind of predictions we want and what should the user journey be. I remember when we were iterating the home screen, it took us 37 iterations to actually get it right in terms of minor things like should we have a vertical scorecard, should we have a horizontal scorecard. And yeah, so I think, so because design was very critical in the phase where we had one part where, we did a quick MVP with our assumptions, then we took the market assumptions. Design was very crucial to understand how the initial user experience should be. And as a startup, it's very tough to get that first design resource. So the product people who were on the team were playing the quasi role of design, the quasi role of user research, all of those roles. But we also had a design agency that we worked with. They were our design partners. They helped us, get the current shape in terms of where it is. We worked with a company in HSR layout called Lollipop, and they helped us, get our designs a lot better with the kind of feedback that we had from users. So our first design that went to market was done with the help of our design partner Lollipop. And by then we started hiring, and we also changed the way we work. Initially, we used to do wireframing on Balsamic. Product guys used to do wireframing on Balsamic. Now we've completely gone away from that mode. We sit along with the designer and we say, okay, how do we want the experience to be? Then the designer directly, since the screens are more or less defined, the color, the backgrounds, all of that are defined. The visual designer basically puts this on a screen and then plays the experience out. So now we've just completely removed that step of a product manager removing this or even having an interaction designer, because right now with the current team structure in place, we are able to release things faster and release things that users feel are things that are intuitive enough for them. So design has been a very important part of the whole journey, and it's because we felt that at that point we needed an interaction design firm that could help us exactly get what the user wanted. We were able to spend that much money and get a design firm like Lollipop. So design is fairly important even in an ML first approach.
Right. Thank you, Karthik. That was very clear, and thank you for this session as well.
My pleasure.
Karthik, so we have one last question from Piyush. Piyush, you want to ask that question?
Thanks, Diwakar, and thank you, Karthik, for such a useful and insightful session. So one question which I had regarding the product market fit of one of the feature that you built. You spoke about Criclytics in quite depth, right? So what I wanted to understand was you were involved right from the inception of the idea till the actual shipping of the product, right? So what I wanted to understand was how did you figure out that since it was all new for you as well, this ML first approach to building while building a product. So what I wanted to ask you was how did you figure out that PMF was achieved, and were there any challenges involved in figuring that out?
See, again, PMF being achieved is something where you're on the boat and the boat is going in the right direction, but it still hasn't hit coast. So I still don't think we've hit product market fit. What we are testing is a bunch of observations that yes, a lot of users seem to be, especially when we launched for IPL and World Cup. We realized that a lot of users loved the concept, going by the reviews that users gave. But even though it was only a 3-screen experiment, they felt that, boss, your app is as good as CricInfo or CricBuzz, but can you have the most basic things like what those guys have? And then we realized that people are not looking at this as an experiment, but they think that we are a full-blown app that doesn't have these screens. So, and then we also realized that the way we presented it, the initial tech or structure that we had was, not supporting whatever we were trying to build, going further. So we had to do a complete platform revamp, and it's like an open heart surgery that took us about 6 to 7 months. And again, while we are in this journey, this IPL will help us, completely figure out that is this the kind of content that users are looking? And because this is a platform which is built on good tech, our users, loving it so much that they're coming back again and again. So I think this IPL would have given us a fair idea of where we are in our journey, and accordingly we could decide, okay, now what do we do? Do we go, what is the amount of money that we need to go raise? What is the kind of vision that we should, target? Right now, we're being supported by, as I said, the parent company, which has fair amount of belief in, whatever we're trying to create. But again, I wouldn't say the product market fit has been achieved as yet. We've just seen signs that we're nearing a coast, but we're not yet there.
Understood. Thank you so much, Karthik.
So folks, can we have a big round of applause for Karthik? We can just unmute ourselves and clap for 10-15 seconds.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Karthik. It's been a pleasure. I think a lot of us understand that machine learning and data is something which is the future. And today we have understood a few more things about something which sounds complicated and something which seems out of reach to a lot of people who are doing this for the first time. Thank you very much for taking your time to both of you. And we wish all the best to cricket.com and to you for your future endeavors.
Thank you. And someone, I think Bharat asked, saying, trying to find the app on the App Store.
What should I look for? I'm not able to find that.
See, if you go to cricket.com, the website, there will be a prompt that will ask you to download, but it is available on the Play Store and App Store. Cricket, yeah.
I'll check that out. Thanks.
Actually, even I searched cricket and it shows all the cricket playing apps.
Yeah, fantasy games.
So maybe we'll have to search like cricket.com literally.
Okay. Right, cricket.com, yeah. We're still not optimized on, our ASO is not that strong that, for cricket we show up in the top 3 results. But yeah, we'll hopefully get there in some time.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Divakar and Chandranus for the opportunity.
Thank you, Karthik, for accepting. It was a wonderful session indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.